I never thought I'd be the one standing over my own father's hospital bed, staring at a stack of eviction notices and medical bills that totaled more than we'd earned in the last 5 years combined, wondering if I should sell my soul or my dignity just to keep the lights on for my little sister. They say desperation breeds monsters, but in my case, it bred a fighter, a literal, blood-stained, bone-breaking machine that nobody saw coming. I was just a scrawny kid from the trailer park, the one everyone used as a punching bag in the hallways, until the night I realized that if I didn't start hitting back, my family wouldn't just be homeless, we'd be erased. Was I wrong to risk my life and my sanity and underground rings just to put bread on the table? Or would you have let your family starve while you played by the rules? Tell me right now, would you have picked up the gloves or would you have watched your world burn? It all started on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, miserable day that seems to hang over our town like a shroud. My name is Leo, and at 17, I wasn't thinking about prom or college applications. I was thinking about the $4.50 in my pocket and how I was going to turn it into a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread that would last us 3 days. My dad had been the backbone of our house, a construction foreman who worked 18-hour shifts until a steel beam decided his spine wasn't necessary anymore. After the accident, the company denied the claim, the insurance ran dry, and suddenly, the man who used to carry me on his shoulders couldn't even lift a spoon to his mouth. The silence in our house was the worst part. It wasn't a peaceful silence, but a heavy, suffocating one that smelled of antiseptic and damp wallpaper. My mom had passed away years ago, so it was just me, my broken father, and my 8-year-old sister, Mia. Mia is the kind of kid who still believes in magic, who draws pictures of superheroes and thinks they're coming to save us. I had to be that superhero, but I didn't have a cape. I just had two shaking hands and a lot of built-up rage. Every night, I'd listen to my father coughing in the other room, a sound that tore through my chest because I knew he was trying to hide his pain so I wouldn't worry. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the utility bills that were printed in aggressive red ink, calculating how many shifts I'd need to pick up at the diner just to pay a fraction of what we owed. I remember walking home from my third shift at the local diner, my apron still smelling like old grease and disappointment, when I saw the red sticker on our front door. Eviction. We had 72 hours. The cold air hit my lungs like a physical blow. I went inside and found Mia sitting on the floor, drawing by the light of a single candle because the electricity had been cut that morning. She looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes and asked if we were going camping since the lights were out. I had to choke back a sob, nodding and telling her it was an adventure, while my stomach twisted into a knot of pure, unadulterated terror. I went to the back room where my dad was lying, his face gaunt and pale. He tried to speak, to apologize for being a burden, but I just held his hand and told him I had a plan. I didn't have a plan. I had nothing but a hollow feeling in my gut and the realization that the world didn't care if we disappeared. That night, I walked to the edge of town, to the old shipyard where the abandoned warehouses stood like giant skeletons. I'd heard rumors about the Pit, an underground fight club where people with too much money gambled on people with too much to lose. I wasn't a fighter. I was the kid who ran away from fights. I was the one who kept my head down and ignored the insults. But when I looked at my bruised knuckles from punching the brick wall of our trailer in frustration, I realized that pain was the only currency I had left. I walked into that warehouse, the smell of stale beer, sweat, and copper filling my lungs, and I found the man in charge, a guy named Silas, who looked like he'd been carved out of granite and bad intentions. He was sitting on a throne of mismatched crates, counting a stack of hundreds that could have solved all my problems in a second. I told him I wanted in. He laughed, a deep, rattling sound, and told me I'd be dead in 30 seconds. He called over a group of guys who looks like they lived on a diet of gravel and lightning, and they all joined in the laughter. I didn't flinch. I told him if I lasted a minute, he had to give me $100. If I won, I wanted 1,000. He took one look at the desperation in my eyes, the kind of look you only get when you're staring at the end of the world, and finally nodded, signaling for a fight to begin. My first fight wasn't a movie. There was no montage, no upbeat music. It was a brutal, ugly blur of teeth-rattling impacts and the taste of my own blood. My opponent was a guy twice my size named the Hammer, and for the first 3 minutes, I was his personal stress ball. He broke my nose in the first 30 seconds. I felt the cartilage pop, a white-hot flash of pain blinding me, but all I could see in the darkness of my mind was that red eviction notice. Every time his fist hit my ribs, I thought about Mia shivering in the dark. Every time I hit the concrete, I thought about my dad's empty medicine bottles. I didn't fight with technique. I fought with a terrifying, primal need to survive. I stayed down until the count of 9 every single time, crawling back up because the floor was the only place I couldn't afford to be. The Hammer started to get frustrated. He couldn't understand why this skinny kid kept standing up after taking shots that would have leveled a building. Finally, he got cocky. He swung a heavy, lazy hook and I ducked, not because I was fast, but because I was falling. As I went down, I drove my fist upward with every ounce of weight I had left. It caught him square on the chin. His eyes rolled back and the giant toppled. The room went silent. I had won. Silas handed me 10 $100 bills, his expression shifting from amusement to something like respect. I ran all the way home, my chest burning, my vision blurry from a black eye that was already swelling shut. I tucked the money under Mia's pillow and sat by the door with a kitchen knife, guarding my family until the sun came up, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and absolute self-loathing. That was the beginning of my double life. By day, I was the quiet kid in the back of the class with clumsy excuses for my bruises, lying to my teachers and my sister about why I was always limping. By night, I was becoming a ghost in the ring. I spent every spare second at an old, rundown gym owned by a man named Pops, a former pro who had lost everything to the bottle. He saw me hitting a heavy bag with more heart than form and took me under his wing. He didn't ask questions about the blood on my shirt. He just taught me how to breathe, how to pivot, and how to make my small frame an impossible target. We worked in that freezing gym for hours, the only sound being the rhythmic thud of leather against canvas. Pops taught me that boxing isn't about the punch you throw, but the punch you can take while still thinking 3 steps ahead. You got a glass house for a life, kid, he'd tell me, so you better learn to be the stone. Over the next 6 months, the legend of the ghost grew. I wasn't just fighting for bread anymore. I was fighting for a future. I paid off the back rent. I bought the expensive neurological equipment my dad needed for his physical therapy at home. I filled the fridge with everything Mia ever wanted, watching her face light up when she saw fresh fruit and real cereal. But the cost was heavy. My grades plummeted, my friends stopped calling because I was always busy or tired, and I lived in a constant state of physical agony. Every muscle in my body felt like it was being pulled apart by pliers. My ribs never quite healed, and I had a permanent ringing in my left ear that made it hard to hear what people were saying. I was becoming a stranger to myself, a shadow that only felt alive when I was bleeding. But then came the call that changed everything. Silas told me about a tournament, a high-stakes winner-take-all event in the city. The prize was $50,000. It was enough to move us out of this town, to get my dad into a real private clinic, and to start over where nobody knew my name or my scars. But the opponent was a monster named Viktor, a disgraced pro who had killed a man in the ring 3 years prior. Viktor didn't fight for money. He fought because he liked the sound of bones breaking. He was a predator in human skin, and everyone knew that whoever stepped in with him might not step out. So that is the situation I found myself in, standing on the precipice of losing everything I had built or potentially losing my life against a man who was paid to be a killer. I was terrified, not for myself, but for what would happen to Mia if I didn't come home. Who would take care of her? Who would make sure my dad got his meds? I spent the night before the fight sitting on the floor of my sister's room, watching her sleep, wondering if this was the last time I'd ever see her peaceful face. Before I tell you what happened in that final bloody showdown, I want you to pause right now and comment below. If you were 17 years old, with your family's entire existence resting on your ability to survive a beating from a literal killer, would you have stepped into the ring or would you have walked away and hoped for a miracle that might never come? Let me know, because at that moment, I felt like the loneliest person on earth. The night of the tournament, the air in the warehouse was electric, thick with the sense of high-stakes gambling, expensive cigars, and bloodlust. The ring was just a square of dirty canvas surrounded by rusted chains. Viktor was a mountain of muscle, his eyes cold and vacant like a shark that had spotted its prey. When the bell rang, he didn't even move. He just waited for me to come to him, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. The first round was a massacre. He didn't just hit me, he dismantled me with surgical precision. He broke 2 of my ribs in the first 2 minutes. I could feel the jagged edges of bone scraping against my lungs with every breath I took, making it feel like I was inhaling fire. Pops was screaming from the corner, telling me to move, to stay outside, but I was trapped against the chains. Viktor's fists felt like sledgehammers. By the 3rd round, my vision was swimming, and the world was tilting on its axis. I could hear the crowd chanting for Viktor to finish it, their voices a distorted roar in my ears. I hit the canvas hard, the cold grit of the floor pressing against my cheek. I looked out into the darkness of the crowd, and for a split second, I imagined I saw Mia's drawing of a superhero pinned to our fridge. I realized then that superheroes don't win because they're the strongest or the fastest. They win because they're the ones who refuse to stay down when the world tells them they're beaten. I dragged myself up using the chains, coughing up blood, and looked Viktor right in his cold, dead eyes. He looked surprised. He thought I was done. In the 4th round, I stopped trying to outbox him. I stopped trying to be a technician or a student of the game. I became the scrawny kid from the trailer park again, the one who had nothing left to lose. I let him hit me. I took a devastating blow to the temple that sent me reeling, and as he moved in for the kill, thinking I was finished, I used his own momentum against him. I slipped inside his guard, buried my head in his chest so he couldn't get leverage, and delivered a flurry of hooks to his liver that made him gasp. It was the first time I'd seen him show pain. He stumbled back, his breathing ragged. I didn't stop. I poured every year of hunger, every night of cold, every day of being bullied, and every tear I'd shed from my father into my fists. I wasn't just punching a man, I was punching the poverty, the unfairness, and the hopelessness that had tried to bury my family. I hit him until my hands went numb, until the skin on my knuckles tore, until the referee had to physically tear me off him. Viktor was out cold, a fallen titan on a stained floor. I had won the $50,000. I had won our life back. The aftermath was a whirlwind of hospital visits and legal paperwork. Silas tried to get me to sign a contract for more fights, but I threw the blood-soaked gloves at his feet and walked away. With the money, I moved my family 3 states away to a small house with a garden where Mia could finally play outside without fear. We got a place with a porch and a real kitchen. I retired from the underground circuit that very night, knowing that if I stayed, I'd eventually lose the very soul I was trying to save. Today, my dad can walk with a cane, and he's back to telling his old jokes, even if his voice is a little shakier than it used to be. Mia is at the top of her class, still drawing superheroes, though now they all look a little bit like me, with slightly crooked noses and scars over their eyes. I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, my hands shaking, feeling the ghost of a punch landing on my jaw. But then I hear the steady breathing of my family in a safe house, and the nightmares fade. Looking back, I realized that the hardest fight wasn't in the ring against Viktor or the hammer. It was the fight against the feeling that we were worth nothing and that we were destined to fail. I learned that you don't need a ring to be a fighter, and you don't need a title to be a man. You just need something worth fighting for, and someone who believes you can win. If this story moved you, or if you think I did the right thing by taking those risks for my family, please like this video. It helps me know that there are people out there who understand what it's like to be backed into a corner where the only way out is through. If you want to hear more stories about people overcoming the impossible and fighting for their lives, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.
And seriously, I want to hear your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments. Was I a hero for saving them, or just a desperate kid who got lucky in a world that usually eats people like me alive? I'll be down there responding to as many of you as I can. Thank you for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.